What has shaped you into being the marketeer and the business professional you are today?
I always wanted to be in the entertainment business because I believe that entertainment has the ability to impact people. Starting my career with advertising, what is that innovation that will make you stand apart? It's not easy. Watching a movie is actually a job because you got to leave your house, get into your car, go to the theater, park your car, navigate traffic, park your car, go up, buy the ticket, watch the film and come back.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Manifestations. This is the podcast on Manifest Media that aims to understand the real deal of a subject called marketing and communications. My name is Manasi. I've been a career marketeer across several industries in the private sector and now in the social impact space. And I really enjoy hosting this because I believe it helps understand what marketers and communications professionals do across industries. And for today's episode, I have the absolute pleasure of having with us on the show Vivek Krishnani, who's the CEO of Epic Studios, the movie business of the Epic company. Vivek, it's fabulous to have you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And it's fabulous because I don't think there's anyone in India who does not consume movies in some form, or cricket, which are the two passion points. And you've had a long career in the movies and the entertainment industry. So why don't you start by telling the audience a little bit about your journey and what has shaped you into being the marketeer and the business professional you are today?
Firstly, thank you, Mansi. For us in the film business, when we are not making films, we love to talk about them. So happy to be here. As far as my journey is concerned, I always wanted to be in the entertainment business because I believe that entertainment has the ability to impact people. When I was doing my management studies, I got a job offer in my summers with a bank. I won't name which bank. And that was the first offer that interview I went for, and I got the offer at the bank. After I came out and they said you've been selected, I really kind of was thinking, whether is this what I want to do? I turned back in and I went back and I said, thank you for the offer, but I'm sorry, but I can't take this offer because my heart lies in something more creative and something more different. If I had got the banking job, my balance sheet would have been good, but with this creative role, my emotional P&L is a little bit better at this point in time. So having said that, having been in media and entertainment now 29 years plus, starting my career with advertising because, that's an inroad into a creative kind of realm. Having done that, I was lucky to be part of the launch of Star Plus, which became a Hindi channel at that point in time, and part of launch of the Kaun Banega Crorepati, the first one. And that's kind of gave the rise of, Star. And having kind of done television, then I got the opportunity to be part of radio. Did radio, then I got the opportunity to be part of a kids channel where we worked together, which was Cartoon Network. So after having kind of, got this thing into the movie business, what's really kind of helped me in good stead is the fact that it was important for me to know what I wanted to do, right? And that's something that has been my focus all the way throughout. Also in terms of, especially with regards to marketing, right? Because that's where I started my career. What is really important is for you to know who's the target audience that you are trying to create this communication for. And the second big thing that I really believe in, which I used to push the teams, is that what is the big idea, right? What is that innovation that will make you stand apart from any other communication in the movie business? With regards to movies, especially when you look at all the marketing efforts are directed towards that one opening day. So there is an urgency that you have to create for people to come and buy your ticket and come into the theaters. It's not easy because the whole job of watching a movie is actually a job because you got to leave your house, get into your car, go to the theater, park your car, navigate traffic, park your car, go up, buy the ticket, go buy the concessions, watch the film and come back. All of this is actually like a job in that sense. So if I have to motivate somebody to take the trouble to do that, marketing has to do its job well. And which is what we kind of kept in mind, that if I have to make the audience take all this effort, what is it that will excite them or prompt them to, make this their priority? Considering in today's day and age when there are so many different distractions, to get people to focus on movies as a specific entertainment option, the challenge is huge. And that's what we've been keeping in mind as to what is it, that thing that will basically drive people to come to the theaters.
Yeah.
Obviously, keeping in mind that the content has to be solid, because without the content, whatever you do, it's not going to drive audiences. So if you have a good product which you believe in, then getting people to the theaters is the most important aspect of it. So that's the kind of thing that we used to keep in mind as we went along, and ensuring that who is the target audience. That's the first part. And what is it different? What are the different things that you can do? What can you do, from an innovation perspective, that will take a place in the consideration set of the audiences. So that's the
trajectory.
Yeah, exactly.
No, so it's amazing, and obviously, so some of the what we call the basics of marketing: know your target audience, know your differentiation, believe in your product. Equally true here. But before we get into the specifics of each of these, maybe you could tell the audience this is one industry that's obviously seen tectonic shifts. I think when we were children, used to be go buy one ticket, go to the theater. It used to be a big deal. Right. Now content is available 24/7, multiple Correct. Screens. Correct. So how has that changed in terms of delivery of content? Also, what are some of the themes over the years that have shaped Indian cinema?
Right. Let's first talk about the consumer behavior towards movies and OTT in that sense. Prior to 2016, when there were no OTTs, movies was obviously consumed in the theater, right? And then it was the satellite television on which people used to kind of consume films. Then came the OTT. That brought the films into your kind of drawing room or your bedroom or your screen closer to you. You can watch it at any point in time, in the comfort of your home. What actually tipped that consumer behavior was COVID. Right? At COVID, everybody was at home. You were basically, not allowed to go out. You had screen, you had internet, and voila, that kind of exposed you to content from across the world. Yeah. It educated people on what good content can be and how much of that exists. That really kind of changed the consumer behavior, where you started polarizing between films that were working for cinema and films that were working for OTT. We have obviously seen that nowadays, when you look at films that are working in cinemas, they have to be event films, they have to be tentpole films, or they have to be an extremely high concept film that like I mentioned, to get people to take the trouble of doing the job of watching a movie, they have to be motivated by the content narrative. And therefore, that urgency has to be built in terms of creating this. Otherwise, people feel, okay, fine, if the film word of mouth is not good or it's not really working, then they would say, okay, let's watch it on OTT in a few weeks or a few months' time, right? So that's the change that we have seen as far as audience behavior is concerned over the last few years, specifically driven by the pandemic push. And when you kind of look at the themes that we're kind of talking about, right? Obviously, okay, just before I get to the themes, also in terms of how the consumer behavior changed when multiplexes came into the mix, right? In 2007, 2008, India, there was a multiplex boom that happened in India. Single screens were giving way for multiplexes, plush screens, good theaters, good washrooms. People were going to the theater more often. And that was driven largely by the tier one cities. Tier 2 cities were still kind of run by the single screens. So then what happened is you saw a change in the kind of films that were being made. You saw films moving away from being, or not moving away, in addition to the mass entertainers, films started being made for with high concept narratives. Smaller films which people thought, whether it was Bheja Fry, whether it was Devdi, whether it was any of these small films that you kind of that you saw, it actually was made for the multiplex audiences because it was a new fad at that point in time, right? People are flirting with the multiplex as a medium. So you saw content suddenly start, looking different from what the mass narratives that were there of larger than life heroes, larger than life action. that continued, but in addition to that, you saw a separate language of cinema being created, which was targeted towards multiplex audiences. So that was the era of the multiplex boom, right? Before that, there were single screens, so you needed mass cinema because everybody was kind of watching with that kind of a lens. Post the multiplex boom, right, which is when I kind of spoke about the pandemic a little bit earlier, you saw that the audiences now got that multiplex kind of films at home. So people stopped going to the theaters for these kind of films, right? Now you suddenly feel that, but these films, which was slice of life, which was coming of age, which was road trips, these films are not working anymore in theaters. Why? They used to work earlier, but now they are not working in theaters, right? They might work, on OTT in a big way, but in theaters they don't seem to kind of drive audiences anymore because of the volume of content that they've consumed, because of the kind of exposure that they've had to global content. They suddenly now want to watch something that's different, something that's unique, something that motivates them, excites them. Like I said, makes them take the trouble of coming to the theater and pay that ticket price, almost, right? So that is where the entire texture has changed. There were films that were made for multiplexes between 2008 to 2016, still a bit continued till about 2020, but post the pandemic, the entire texture of content has changed, where audiences have now compartmentalized films that they want to watch in theater and films that they are okay watching on OTT. And that's what you've seen, as we are in this particular era today. Content creators are pushed back to the drawing board to think of, okay, now what will kind of attract audiences, which is why you see a lot of content now going back to the narrative of mythology, culturally rooted content, patriotism, all the stories that are like coming from the masses, right? And that's what people want to watch. Multiplex audiences are also going for these kind of films in a big way. That's also because of the fact that multiplexes audiences being discerning, they have got multiple, they are the most disloyal audience, right? Because tomorrow I tell my friend, okay, fine, I'll take you to dinner to a nice restaurant, we'll go for this movie sometime later, he'll jump at it, right? Because there are so many different options for multiplex going audiences. But for tier 2, tier 3 cities where movies is a family viewing experience, it's the going out to eat a meal or watch a movie are the two main entertainment options. They then are coming to the theaters, and we therefore are now thinking of what kind of content is going to work for them. And that same content now, when it comes into multiplexes, audiences are also then watching them. But the films that are made for multiplexes, because the audiences are so disloyal, not necessarily travel and make the kind of money that they would like, they would perhaps would want to, right? A case in point is Homebound, right? Lovely film. Everybody kind of felt that it was almost Oscar nominated. There was a lot of buzz around it. Great film, right? Released, it was largely targeted at a certain set of target audience, which was targeted with the multiplex going audience. So you saw that, people came into the theaters for the film because of the hype that it had, but it didn't travel, right? So therefore, to that extent now, content creators, like I said, are thinking, what is that that's going to be the least common denominator
which will travel
that will travel across multiplex audiences, single screen audiences, and across various regions in India as well. So that's the other challenge that we see, that like India is not just a single country, but it's 28 different countries in that sense. So how do you then create content that talks to different individuals across these various geographies?
Yeah, it's actually harder than it looks, and much easier to watch a film than to, I think, go through this. But yeah, you did touch upon the regional bit. So that's again because not only, I mean, of course, all of us as marketers know it is 28 different countries, but I think here you really have to understand there are obviously regional heroes and heroines who are completely different. There's a regional ethos, you know, they're probably, so you've really got to bake so much of that into making a movie, which is remarkable. And you'd obviously spoken about knowing your target audience, which is kind of marketing 101. But in this case, given that A, your product varies incredibly from one to the other, audiences therefore are different. Audiences do not articulate, like unlike say a soap or a shampoo where they can say, I want XYZ ABC. Here it's all heart. Right? People, I'm sure, find it hard to articulate. I can't imagine being asked, what would you like to see in a movie, and having a coherent answer to it. So how do you, as a, as a professional in this space, try and get that finger? Because like you said, if you get that wrong, then nothing else really matters.
Absolutely. So as far as films are concerned, unlike other products where there's tangibility, this is completely intangible. So when you actually ask somebody what do you want to watch, you'll never get the answer.
Of course.
People can never tell you what they want, but they can definitely tell you what they don't like, right? So as filmmakers, we have to be mindful of what is the cultural context that is existing at that point in time. If you go back in time, in the 70s, there was a certain angst that the young people were having against the government and this and that. Then that gave rise to the angry young man era, right? After the 80s, 70s, 80s, when that kind of got over, it gave rise to the lover boy era, right? In the 90s, that entire lover boy era that kind of came, which basically romance,
feel good,
those kind of films started coming, which built, Shah Rukh Khan as the lover boy of the nation. Then after that, you saw social narratives, whether it's Toilet Ek Prem Katha, whether it's Padman, you saw those kind of films, suddenly kind of, being part of what movies were being made. After that, now what you're seeing is patriotic films, that are working, whether it's Dhurandhar, whether it is Border, whether it's Uri, whether it is, any of these films that are working as well. So you have to be, as a filmmaker, in tune with what is that thing that is the conversation point of audiences, of people in the country at large. And therefore, once you tap into that and are able to identify that, then you have to make the film with that understanding and knowledge. Now what's happened is that along with making the film, there is also film research that's happening. People are being shown the film, obviously in a market research kind of a setting, and then there's a questionnaire that's administered, which gives you a sense of whether people understood the film, the comprehension of the narrative, the pace of the film, characters they liked, they didn't like, what they really thought was not working for the film. And then so now people are using that a lot more in trying to refine the film that has already been made. With AI now, what's also happening is that there is script research that's happening, right? So scripts are now being entered into AI, and then there are companies that offer this facility where it gives you scores based on obviously a huge amount of data that has been fed into the system already, in terms of what people will like, what people will not like, and so on and so forth. It's still early days, but people are doing that to basically ensure that you have some kind of a, because movie business, you can never be 100% sure of what will work and what won't, right? And like I said, audiences can't tell you what they want.
Audiences can't.
So you have to, along with the data will tell you up to now what was the trend, right? But instinct will take you forward. And I think that is what we need to bank on as filmmakers. So that's what we've been seeing, that when you are betting on a certain narrative or betting on a certain kind of content, you have to ensure that it is something that is relevant from a
cultural
context point of view, and it's something unique and new to offer. Right? What the problem that we see is that when we do something that's we are trying to follow something that's trending, you end up pretending. So that's basically what happens, that you become a me too of that. And बोलते हैं कि एक अच्छी पिक्चर के पीछे 100 शहीद होती हैं, because everybody tries to follow,
jump on that
bandwagon.
Yeah.
So as filmmakers, you have to be mindful of what is it that the audiences want to watch, and what is it different that you are telling them, which will make them take the trouble of coming to the cinema, and spending that 2.5 hours. Earlier, this norm was, oh, who's going to watch a 3.5 hour film?
But now,
Durandar
clearly
busted it, right? Very clearly, because it was a film that sucked you in, from get-go. The way it was edited, the way story was told. So, as long as the story is good, people are going to watch your film, and that's something that we as filmmakers, we have to be mindful of and focus on.
No, and I think what you said is a very important point, that there is the fine line between playing too safe, in which case you become a follower,
exactly,
and being so adventurous that people can't relate to it.
Correct.
And that's where, and it's very interesting that yes, of course, AI will get better, as you rightly said, but there will always remain that aspect of human judgment.
100%.
How far to leap.
100%. And I think that you can never take away, right? That human insight that exists, or the human ability to actually feel that thing, is something that will always remain. It's not that you can depend 100% on AI
research research and data. No, makes absolute sense. Yeah. Now, when you've obviously worked for so many years in the movie business, any standouts that you feel that have worked from a business production? Obviously, they're popular hits, but
right,
what would you say are any top things that you felt very happy?
So, we did a film called 102 Not Out, where there were two characters. One was playing a 102-year-old and the other was playing a 76-year-old. Now, everybody kind of said, who's going to watch a film about old people? Right?
In a country like India, with its
like
youth,
India, right?
youth population.
Youth actually kind of going to cinemas in a big way. But we really believed in the film, and when we saw the film, that we were more charged about what the messaging of the film was. And we tried to kind of create a campaign that was young. So we used animated surroundings with real life characters in them. Like we showed Rishiji coming out of an egg, and Mr. Bachchan standing right next to him. So we tried to create things that were fun, but at the same time it spoke about this film that was about two old people. We also got them to do connect with audiences, because they are stars in there, right? And they have worked together. So we kind of organized a session at the Royal Opera House where they spoke about the films that they had done. Amar Akbar Anthony, what happened. I mean, lots of beautiful stories that came out. Created audience engagement, right? Earlier people used to, the way marketing used to be, it used to shout at audiences. Nowadays, you have to engage with the audience. You have to have a conversation with the audience. And that's what we actually went with. We created these engagements. We also took we also created communication where, we took the fact that they were not young on their, directly onto themselves, where they said that, we know that we are old, but we can still give it to the youngsters, right? So that was like a way of trying to, say that we're still relevant. And then the film then released. The first weekend, was pretty good. The second weekend was bigger than the first weekend, and we saw people, not necessarily perhaps the younger audience, but an audience that was above 55, 60, that came in large numbers because it was a subject that was talking to them. So you have to understand that there are different cohorts that exist, and you have to talk to that cohort and motivate them to come to cinema. And being, such a large country, as filmmakers, once you understand what cohort, which is what I started by saying, who is your target audience? If you know which cohort you're making the film for, go all out. because then that cohort will come. Whether then if somebody else who is not part of the cohort does not come, it doesn't matter, because each cohort size, because of the size of country we are, is so huge that they will end up coming to cinema. And we saw that with 102 Not Out, where we saw that, you know, people were coming in wheelchairs, people were coming with walking sticks, and they were like, you know, there were stories that they were talking about that was relevant to them, which was happening to the characters on screen. And we saw that, you know, the film grew from week to week and eventually ended up doing like a box office of about 50-55 crores, which was unheard of when you kind of think about a bet that you would take on, you know, a film with two older people. So that's something that it really opened our eyes, that, you know, there are multiple Indias within India. And if you are talking to a cohort that you think that will want to watch this film, go ahead and make it, you know, for them.
And it's probably, as you said, less cluttered. Everyone's talking about a young India, youthful India.
Exactly.
But given the size, every cohort.
And then there is romance, there is a space for romance, there is a space for action, you know, so there is a space for male audiences, there's space for young audiences, there's space for family audiences, and then there is also a space for older audiences, you know. So I think it's about, but it comes with betting on the right content. It starts with that. You know, storytelling is the key part of it. Filmmaking comes later, but the story is what the crux of it is. So I think ensuring that you focus on the story. Then there are many other examples. There was another film that obviously we did was Piku, right? You know, Piku was a very, very simple story, right, about father-daughter relationship, and then the protagonist in the film has this issue of constipation. And when we kind of, you know, played out the film, there were so many people who came that, you know, my father also behaves in the same way. You know, he's also like, you know, he's kind of gets cranky when it is, you know, when he's not feeling too good. And the relationship was very real. And that's what people connected with, you know, very simple story, but that insight was real. So that's what we kind of then, you know, tapped into, you know, when we went out. The father-daughter relationship is what we did, you know, we did a tie-up with Brook Bond, you know, where we kind of got people to talk about their father-daughter stories having a cup of tea, and then, you know, ran a whole campaign around it, which was hugely successful. So it's about identifying that insight and then ensuring that that insight is real, and then going ahead and amplifying that. And that's what really worked for us, you know. And also case in point was Padman, you know, which we did. It was a film about, you know, a strong social issue. How do you then, you know, talk about, you know, this in a manner that, so we said, let's go ahead and own it, right? Let's go and talk about it. And you know, we then tried to obviously also focused on the character, that was Arunachalam Muruganantham, but we also then spoke about the issues where we started owning it. You know, the actors came out and, you know, they actually kind of spoke about it, holding up photographs, holding a sanitary pad, which basically became, you know, talk of the nation, because it was subject that people were not openly talking about. Now, as a film that you really brought it out into the open, it was something that suddenly now everybody
started breaking those taboos.
Exactly. So things like that. So I think, you know, as filmmakers, you have to keep, you have to understand what is that insight that you are kind of talking about, what's your cohort that you're talking to, and what is it that you will do that will motivate that cohort to come into the theatre. So that's where it is.
No, it's amazing, and I think there's so many examples, and I think one, obviously, which is incredible about movies is the ability to lead societal transformation. Exactly. And I think that is a very important role, and it's almost, I think, a responsibility.
Right.
But I'll touch a little bit on the marketing aspects, and you made a very interesting comment that earlier it used to be almost one way, talking down, just but now it's much more about engagement, drawing people out.
Right.
So so how has your media mix changed? Because obviously one sees there's the traditional out of home, there's a lot of digital, there's experiential, there's also obviously a lot of what we call PR, you know, with film critics, reviewers, etc.
100%.
So how does that mix come together?
I think they are all, you know, like a buffet. You know, they all have to be part of a nice, wholesome, sumptuous meal experience. So you have to include digital, you have to include PR, you have to include outdoor, you have to include events. So you have to become a part of pop culture in that time span that you have to promote the film. But what it starts with is the trailer.
Yeah.
And ensuring that you have a trailer that works does almost 60 to 70% of the job. Because if you have a trailer that communicates what audiences want to watch or they get excited about, half the job is done. And nowadays, anyways, the windows have become really short. Earlier, they used to be like 2 months, 2.5 months before. Now, suddenly, trailers are dropping like 4 weeks or 3 weeks in advance. Sometimes 2 weeks in advance. So, therefore, your windows of marketing are really short. What you have to do in in that time period is build urgency, right?
Because you want them first day, first show.
You want them to come on the first day, first show. The second, or the most important marketing tool that exists for you is word of mouth, right? Nothing can beat that. If you have managed to generate a great word of mouth, that film, nothing can stop it. A case in point is Sayyara. It came obviously with 2 new actors. The songs were great. They built the urgency for people to watch it. But after they watched the film, the impact of the film on audiences was what was communicated, right? People are crying in theaters. There were people, sitting with drips sitting in theaters. There was obviously, it was a lot of it was, real people feeling those emotions, but it was a lot of marketing as well. And therefore, it really created that FOMO. Oh my God, what am I missing out? That people are really going into the theaters and getting moved by, where I am not. So this word of mouth is something that cannot be replaced. So if you are able to, along with the urgency, get people into the theaters, and after that, if the film is good, then take that word of mouth and amplify it, that then kind of helps drive the box office into a specific zone that, which we've seen with other films, take us out of the orbit in that sense.
No, this is incredible. And obviously, I think one of the key things that you deal with, which most other, I can't think of any other industry that has it. So there's obviously a film, there's a story, there's an insight, but there's also a celebrity, an actor or an actress, and they are obviously in India. And I've heard in the South, people actually build temples to actors and actresses. So, and that could be, as a marketer, a very powerful tool as well, right? In terms of PR, in terms of their own fan following. So just how has that been leveraged? Anything you can share?
So we've had stars in the past, right? Whether it was Rajesh Khanna, whether it was Mr. Bachchan, whether it was Shah Rukh, Salman, Amir, and that stardom is real, right? It's like they're not just connecting with people, but it's connecting with the emotions.
Absolutely.
Right? And so they are emotionally connected. Just to kind of give you an example, I used to live in a building called Ashirwad, and Rajesh Khanna also used to live in a building called Ashirwad. And back in those days, women used to write love letters to Rajesh Khanna, and they used to say Rajesh Khanna, Ashirwad, Bombay. And inevitably, those letters used to end up in our house, right? Because it was Ashirwad by mistake. Not all of them, but some of them
were, yeah.
Right? And they were written in blood, right? Some of them were written in blood and stuff like that, professing their love for him. So stardom is real, right? People are, and especially in the South now, you see,
so the temples are,
it's hero worshipping, literally. So that is definitely there. But what we are seeing right now is that stars are definitely able to drive people to the theaters. But what keeps them there is the story. If they are not able to connect with the story, then the star can do what they want, but it cannot hold it beyond the weekend, right?
And your word of mouth then does not kick in.
Then the word of mouth does not kick in, right? Which is what I said is the most important tool. So the word of mouth backed by star power, which is what Dhurandhar did, right? It created a huge word of mouth. Everybody was driven by the fact that there was Ranveer in it, right? But if you see the first film, Ranveer is so understated. But the story is so powerful that the word of mouth really took it into a specific, it really kind of opened up the eyes of people that this is the potential of box office in India. When Dhurandhar 2 came out,
it beat.
And with Ranveer's star power, it kind of beat part 1 as well. So the star power aided by great word of mouth, you can see magic unfold. What we are seeing,
built on fundamental insight, like you said, it is about patriotism.
Correct.
We unfortunately live in times of heightened political tension, but then that's what led to.
So you have to be, as a filmmaker,
on that,
in tune with what the audiences are talking about, what the chatter is, what are people getting, what's motivating them or not, and therefore identifying those subjects that will then become part of a cinematic, outing. So that's what Dhurandhar did. So basically, star power is definitely there. What we need to also see, stories are the real stars technically, but if you are a star, then you are obviously, aiding that thing. What we are seeing right now is that kind of crazy stardom that was being enjoyed by a lot of stars, the newer lot is still to get there, right? And which is why you see that, the films then have to work for sure for them to be
getting into that
league, right? And Ranveer has just, obviously transitioned into that kind of a league of a superstar, right? So I think that's what you will see as you go forward, that for films to work, the content has to be really, really strong. And you're seeing that happen, that if the content is strong, stars get built. But if the actor is big, but the content is not good, the actor cannot become a star. So it's a story first focus, and we are seeing that the stardom gets you to a point, and we're seeing that stardom also now plateauing, where the newer lot has still not crossed over into the border of stardom as well. So it's interesting to see when that next big star or stars are going to arrive.
No, but this is amazingly fascinating, because it's obviously something that I think as Indians, along with cricket, these are the two that, people have their own likes and dislikes, but just incredible.
I say movies are like I'm a spiritual gambler, because movies are a religion, and every Friday is a gamble.
Okay, that could well be the headline of this. Yeah, but it's incredible. And Vivek, it's been such a pleasure talking. And just one last thing to sort of end, because obviously we do this podcast to sort of share what happens in a marketer's and a business person's life. So looking back on your career, for someone who's looking to join this field as a marketer in the entertainment industry, any top 2 or 3 pieces of advice?
If you're somebody who really wants to get into this industry, and especially from a creative side of things, obviously being passionate goes without saying, right? You have to be passionate, because it's not easy, right? That passion has to sustain you through periods of struggle. You have to then obviously be clear in your head as to, if you're making content, like I said, who you're making it for. That's really, really
the target audience, is absolutely.
That's really important, and therefore, to that extent, I think it's something that if you are going to be part of this industry, you need to figure out what is that role that you are going to play specifically, right? Whether it is the role of a writer, whether it's the role of a director, whether it's the role of a producer, whether it's the role of a cinematographer, you need to identify what is that role that you kind of getting into, and work towards it. It's not going to be easy. I can tell you, it's a lot of hard work and a lot of luck. But my guru once told me that when opportunity meets preparedness, that is called luck. So you have to be prepared. You have to work hard, and if you are ready, you will get the opportunity. And that is something that is I've seen that happen in so many different cases. And the last thing I just like to kind of sign off by saying is that when you're making films, if you don't understand your audience, you lose the relevance. So you have to understand that relevance is not owned, but it is only rented for that Friday, right? So you have to ensure that you remain relevant every Friday. And that is something that has to drive you to work hard to ensure that you don't take audiences for granted and you remain relevant in their scheme of things.
No, this is incredible, and you're so right, because unlike most other, certainly unlike product marketing, here your audience is voting with their wallets every single Friday. And that change, this is absolutely remarkable. So thank you so very much. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.